Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. Before I get into today's subject, just want to make a brief mention of, well, I've been talking about Donald Trump in several vlogs, and in the course of these vlogs, I've sometimes praised him, sometimes criticized him. I've defended him from these attempts to impeach him, to drive him out of office. I've mentioned in the past that I intend to vote for him, at least as of today, not because I think he's such a great president, but because he's so much better than the alternatives in the Democratic Party, and because I basically disagree with their philosophy. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I'm going to be probably very critical of the president in the next few days, and I've had comments and people seeming to think that I just don't like the president, and that's not true. It's nothing personal in one way or the other. I praise him sometimes, I criticize him sometimes, and this will be a separate video. There is a problem, it's the same problem with supporters of Trump and, well, we'll say haters of Trump, that there's no middle ground. It's black and white. People who hate Donald Trump, they require everybody to hate them, or they require people to hate them completely. People who support Donald Trump, so many of them, they require people who say they support Donald Trump in some aspects that it's not enough, that one must support Donald Trump 100% no matter what he says or does. I think that's very dangerous for number one, it's not fair, but number two, it's dangerous for the country and for democracy if you cannot look at a president, whoever it is, as a human being who does some things right, some things wrong, some things you support, some things you oppose, and support him, praise him when you think he's right, criticize him when he's wrong. So if people can't deal with that, I guess I'm putting myself at risk in a way, because I don't have that many viewers, I think, at this early stage. But if that's a big problem for you, if you're a supporter of Trump and you can't stand for me to criticize him, then I guess you'll just have to not watch these vlogs. Though I would prefer that you watch the vlogs and then just put your comments in the comments section. Likewise, for people who hate Trump, if you can't stand me praising Trump sometimes, then again, this is probably the wrong vlog for you. But I would prefer, again, that if you have a disagreement with me, then just put it in the comments. And then even better, for those of you who support Trump and those of you who oppose Trump, for you to start a little debate among yourselves in the comments section. It's not just for me. So now, well, one more little thing before I get into the main subject. I'm going to start with a little criticism of Trump. I want to get this little criticism before I get to the big criticism. And the little criticism is that Trump announced a trade deal with China, but he also, which is good, okay, I praise him for that. I think it's good that he saw the light. In fact, there was a commentator named Derek Scissors, American Enterprise Institute, but he's advised the White House. He's advised Donald Trump. He said jokingly, when he was asked if he advises the White House, he says, yeah, I do, I think, but they don't seem to listen to me. But this time they did in this China deal, because it's phase one. And he's actually a little disappointed, this commentator, because he says it's a very small phase one. We don't even have any text yet. But the point he was making was that Trump said that he would not accept anything less than a comprehensive deal that covered everything. He said that over and over and over again, and now he's accepted a quote-unquote phase one. that's something that Trump does. He makes a statement, he takes one position, and then he backs off of it later. He's mercurial. You cannot rely on him. Well, the problem is that it's okay if circumstances cause you to change your mind, and that's obviously what has happened in this case. I think that the economy is being hurt by these tariffs. They are being hurt, and I'm going to do a detailed vlog on this because there are some people, including the president, who do not understand this. I'm going to show you the documentary evidence, and I'm going to provide a description of how our tariff systems work, because there are people who just refuse to believe that we are paying the tariffs. We are paying these Chinese tariffs, and Donald Trump just admitted that because he backed down from this deal. And that is my problem with Donald Trump, is that he never admits error. He never admits when he makes a mistake. That, I think, is a big problem, because when he does make a mistake, he has to find a face-saving way to remedy the situation, which he did here, or just well, actually, that's not what he did here. He just didn't say anything. That's the other thing. Just make a new decision as if he hadn't made the previous decision or the previous statements. That's what happened here. This is a clear back down from his demands for a comprehensive deal. Now we're into a phase one, which hasn't even been finalized. It's still being written. I hope it'll be good, but this is a complaint with Trump that I have. That was a little criticism. So you're probably saying now, if that's a little criticism, what's the big criticism? The big criticism is Turkey. Now, I said going into the weekend, last Friday, well, Monday for you watching the video, but I recorded it Friday, that the pullout of our troops, the retreat from the area of Syria near the Turkish border, that it looked like this could be a disaster in the making. I hoped I would be wrong, but now it's been several days, and it looks like, unfortunately, I am correct. And not just I am correct, but everybody who criticized that decision. And well, I had said in that earlier video, I quoted a soldier who was on the scene saying that he was ashamed of what our country did, pulling them back, and what's happening to the Kurds. I'm going to do, probably over the weekend, I'll gather the material, the quotes and everything, because there's quite a few, and then the video would appear next week. But from generals, 6 generals, 5 of whom worked with Donald Trump directly, not just with Donald Trump, but with Obama or Bush or both. So these are generals speaking from experience, talking about Trump as a commander-in-chief, the way he makes his decisions after talking with them, assuming that he even talks to them at all. That's going to be a future video, but I just want to get that out there because I had just a soldier there, but I have now generals who work with Donald Trump, and I'm now going to read you this article, some quotes from this article, another one, and then I'll give you my comments. So here we go. First headline coming up right here. Trump sends emergency delegation to Turkey amid bloody offensive in Syria. A delegation of senior Trump administration officials will depart for Turkey, quote, as soon as possible, unquote, to negotiate a ceasefire following Ankara's, that's the capital of Turkey, in case you didn't know, some people think it's Istanbul, it's Ankara. Following Ankara's bloody offensive into Syria that killed civilians and helped to reinvigorate the ISIS terror group, according to senior administration officials. So that's my first comment. I'm going to be returning to this, but that was one of the fears. Trump was saying we could pull our troops back because we defeated ISIS. We did not. There are, first of all, tens of thousands of them being held prisoner and who are now, it looks like, already escaping. You have 15 to 18,000 ISIS members who are not prisoners, who are in Syria. They are still there. They don't have their caliphate. They don't have their territory, but they don't have it because we had soldiers there. We still have some soldiers there. We pulled some back. They're still in Syria somewhere. But I read that Trump is preparing to pull all the soldiers all the way out. That's the one point in this first quote, but notice also, as it says here, help to reinvigorate the ISIS terror group according to senior administration officials. In other words, people in the administration, people who work for and with Donald Trump, people who probably advised Trump, I'm guessing, but I think it's a pretty good guess, people who advised him not to do what he did, and he did it anyway, and we are now unfortunately seeing the results. Next quote, the troop withdrawal, which has been criticized by both Republican and Democratic leaders. So you want bipartisanship, there's your bipartisanship. Democrats and Republicans both understand that what Trump did is a mistake. The troop withdrawal, which has been criticized by both Republican and Democratic leaders, set the stage for a renewed wave of violence in Syria that U.S. officials say has threatened to erase American gains in defeating ISIS terrorists. Again, these are United States officials, and well, let's hope that, again, I'm proven wrong, that all of us critics are proven wrong. But this threat, well, that's what it says, has threatened, hasn't said that it's happened, but it looks like it could. Trump said his whole purpose for having the soldiers there was to defeat ISIS, and that he's taking soldiers out now because we've defeated ISIS. What he did, what he ordered, there's a possibility now that it's going to reverse that all of that will have been for nothing. And what's that going to mean? It's going to mean that either Trump or a future president is going to have to send troops in there all over again. And maybe more troops than the 1,000 that were there that he took out. In other words, they were just acting as hair triggers. This will be another vlog too. I'm giving you all these previews of coming attractions, but there's a difference between an endless war that Trump criticizes and a tripwire or a hair trigger, a trigger to prevent the victory, the hard-won victory at the cost of American soldiers' lives, to prevent that from being reversed. We still have 30,000 troops in Korea, South Korea. We have 70,000 in Germany, 70 years or more after the end of World War II. We still have troops there. We have troops in Japan, many more than the 1,000 that were in Syria. Trump is making the same mistake that Obama made in Iraq. We had soldiers in Iraq after a hard-won victory. Obama just ordered most of them out, and then he had to send soldiers back again when the situation deteriorated. This is one characteristic that Obama and Trump apparently have in common, which is not to listen to their military people, to the people who are, I mean, how could you not listen to James Mattis, a man of his ability and experience? The reason he resigned was because Trump was not listening to him, specifically on Syria. He should have listened to him. Next quote, Erdogan refused to listen to our repeated warnings, unquote, about what would happen if he moved his military forces into Syria, according to a third senior administration official who briefed reporters. The situation has gotten out of hand, the official said. In addition to ISIS being rejuvenated, the incursion has interfered with American efforts to isolate Iranian forces in the region and stop them from bolstering Syrian strongman Bashar al-Assad, who has been sheltered by top Iranian commanders on the ground. On Monday afternoon, Trump made good on his repeated promises to economically penalize Turkey for its bloody invasion. Okay, now what he's talking about there, Trump said that if Turkey invaded, that we would impose sanctions on Turkey. He said that he would destroy Turkey's economy. That was the threat. So here is, I'm linking in the description below the video to the text of a letter that Trump sent to Congress. Text of a letter to the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the President of the Senate. Pursuant to the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, I hereby report that I have issued an executive order declaring a national emergency due to the situation in and relation to Syria, and in particular the recent actions by the government of Turkey to conduct a military offensive into northeast Syria. I have taken this action because recent actions by the government of Turkey undermine the campaign to defeat the Islamic State and Syria, or ISIS, endangers civilians, and further threatens to undermine the peace, security, and stability in the region, and thereby constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. I have also announced that steel tariffs will be increased back up to 50%, the level prior to reduction in May. Now, that just a final sentence, just to briefly mention that Turkey doesn't sell much steel to us. They sell the bulk of their steel to other countries, very little to us. So that's not going to hurt them very much. But these economic sanctions are not going to stop Turkey from going after the Kurds and destroying the Kurds. That's a much bigger priority for them. Also, they are buying the S-400 missiles from Russia, so they're getting help from Russia. They are getting financial help from China. You have an admission in this paragraph that the events that are happening after Trump pulled out these troops, which would not have been happening had he left just those 1,000 troops there. But let's assume that these sanctions will work. The question then is, how long will they take to work? How long have we had sanctions on Iran with no positive change in their behavior that I can see? How long have we had sanctions on Venezuela with no apparent change in Maduro's behavior that I can see? We also have some sanctions on some Russian citizens. I don't see any positive effect from that. So the question again is, even if these sanctions on Turkey would work, how much damage could Turkey do in the meantime? And how much farther along, regardless of Turkey, can the rejuvenation of ISIS go? I think it could go far enough that they start to reconstitute their caliphate and we have to go back in there again. That's what I worry about. And this is another criticism of Trump. Since I'm making this Criticize Trump Day, this is so naive on his part, his attitude, or I should say his trust of Erdogan. Erdogan is a monster. He's a thug. And he's anti-Semitic to boot. But the idea that Turkey would keep a promise to take care of these ISIS prisoners, you have to remember that these ISIS members, some of them are Syrian, but a lot of them, maybe most of them, came from other countries. When the caliphate was proclaimed, all these ISIS volunteers flooded in from, well, mostly Europe. They flooded in from Europe to join ISIS. Now, how did these ISIS fighters, these ISIS recruits, how did they get from Europe to Syria? I'll tell you how. I guess Trump doesn't know this, but everybody else should know this. They went through Turkey. Turkey let these ISIS recruits enter Turkey, traverse Turkey, and go into Syria. And now apparently Erdogan, the guy who let all these recruits, all these jihadists go through his country to join ISIS in Syria, he's the guy who's going to guard them now. Words fail me at this point. It's just so naive. It's just incomprehensible. I've said in the past that I don't understand things that our liberal friends do sometimes, but I really don't understand some of the things that Trump does. He's just impulsive. And this is a guy who's never worked in government. He's never been in the military. He's never, well, as I said, this will be a separate vlog of generals talking about what it's like to work with Donald Trump. I will just give you a preview now that they are not happy. So I'm going to start to wind up now. I just want to read it's actually a tweet. This is about the letter that I just told you about, the executive order for the sanctions on Turkey that Trump, well, that's the other thing. Trump threatened these sanctions before Turkey did what Turkey did. He said that, well, if they do that, I'm going to destroy their economy. Obviously, that has not dissuaded Turkey. So that ought to tell you something, that these sanctions, they didn't scare him. Sanctions don't scare people like Erdogan or people like Khamenei of Iran. Only physical force or the proximate threat of physical force, the credible threat, has to be credible, the credible threat of military force, that's the only thing that dissuades these people. Only the threat of force works. So let me just read this tweet here. It's from somebody who calls himself Publius, somebody I usually don't agree with, but this time I have to. Well, I mostly agree. I'll give you my final comment in a moment. But here's the tweet. Trump just declared a, quote, national emergency, unquote, regarding an issue he alone created a week ago. After the Erdogan call, the whole world knew what would happen. The chain of causation was obvious, and it was obvious. Now here's the part where I disagree, just to give you the whole quote though. Yet here we are nevertheless, well, I agree with that part, but Trump is strikingly unfit to be POTUS, unfit to be President of the United States. I disagree with Publius there. Trump is not unfit to be President of the United States. He is fit to be President of the United States. But having said that, he is manifestly unfit to be Commander-in-Chief. The problem is that a Democrat would be just as bad, if not worse, and would be much worse domestically. So that's why, as I've said, despite all my criticisms of Trump, I support him. I'm going to vote for him in 2020 because I don't feel I have a choice, but I am not happy about it, and I would urge him to, as he did with the China trade deal phase 1 that I mentioned earlier, where he changed his mind. I hope he will change his mind here too. I hope he'll find a way to change his mind, either rationalize it somehow or just ignore what he said before. Because if he doesn't, and again I hope to be wrong, but so far I've turned out to be right, I sure hope I don't continue to be proven right on this, because it's going to be very bad for our country. A lot of our allies would be killed, but not only that, you'll have the disaster of Russia and Iran dominating Syria, taking over Syria, extending their influence over the Middle East. I don't understand why Trump does not understand that we need to be involved with the world outside our borders. I hope he gets the message. And I also hope that you'll come back and see me again, whether you agree with me or disagree. And in the meantime, thumbs up. And if you do disagree or agree with me, you can put your comments in the comment section below the video. You can share the video with anybody else you think would benefit from the video. It would be really great if you would subscribe to the video. And finally, come back and see me again, hopefully with happier news but nevertheless, come back and see me again. And until I see all of you again, bye.